Hello, I'm here to show you a quick overview of how I create patterns for my dollhouse dolls. I make miniature porcelain dollhouse dolls. Here's one of my dolls that I'm about to dress in the next few days. And the tools that I use to create my patterns, I use a combination of draping and flat pattern draping. So if you are a sewer, you know what I'm talking about there. It does help to have some sewing experience, so you kind of know how things are supposed to fit on the body and what they're called, etc. I'll try to give you a little bit as I go along here. But first of all, you need the doll, and then any doll, it doesn't matter. And then since I use draping is basically taking fabric and placing it on the body, the dummy, the doll, etc., and drawing your style lines, your pattern lines onto the fabric. So what I get is scrap fabric. This is some scrap fabric I have. And I'm going to place Aleene's Tack It over and over. I'm going to brush it on this side of the fabric because this will keep it sticky. So tack it over and over is like a glue, but it doesn't dry. So it remains a sticky, tacky substance that you can then put on the doll body and it'll stick to the doll body. And the reason why I use this side is because I want this to stick to the body, and this is the side I'm going to draw on. So that's what I'm going to do right now is cover this whole thing and tack it over and over. It's just something I discovered over the years. You could use other repositional type of glues if you like. Some people just use paper towels. I like this because it sticks to the body and kind of holds in place as I'm drawing the lines. So anyway, that's where we're going here. And then after I get all this covered, I'll show you a little bit of the pattern I'm going to make for this doll, and then how I draw the lines onto this scrap fabric. All right, here we are at the next stage of pattern making, and I wanted to show you what tools I use. Here's that scrap fabric I was talking about that I spread a layer of Tack It over and over. I put 2 layers to make it really tacky. I like it super tacky because I can be assured that it's not going to fall off the doll or the mannequin that I'm dressing. So I would do 1 layer, let it dry, and then do a 2nd layer. One of the great things about Aleene's Tack It over and over is it doesn't leave a residue. So you put it on this doll body and then you take it off when you're finished and there's no residue. It's not sticky afterwards. So I do like that. So anyway, follow along. Here is my inspiration costume right here in the corner. It is a medieval style gown. I'm not going to make it exactly like that, but I do like the whole princess lines. Those are the seams that come down off the shoulders across the bust and down the waist and creates a nice fitted silhouette. I say this a lot, I know, but it really helps to know some sewing experience because you know the names for things, the terms for things, you know, basically how a bodice fits, basically how a skirt or pants fit, how a sleeve fits into the armhole is really helpful. I will actually list and show you some of my favorite resource books that I've learned I taught myself how to drape and flat pattern draft. So it's not exact, you know, one way or the other. It's kind of a combo of both, but I will show you at the end of this video the books and references that I like and that I really love to use. So anyway, here we go. You could use a Sharpie if you like, or just a regular ballpoint pen. Use a pair of scissors you don't mind getting gummed up. So anyway, I know this isn't quite a tutorial, but it just gives you an idea of what I do. And really, if you have any questions, please ask me. I love to answer questions. I love doing this. This is so much fun. So we're going to do 1/2 of her body because then we just mirror it to the other side when we create the actual paper pattern. I'm going to go a little bit over the center of her body, just a little bit more, a little bit higher up. I'm going to start with creating the center panel, and this will include the neckline. The neckline's kind of low. It's going to be like a boat neckline if you know what that means. Well, that pin's not working. Let's try another one. You know what? I really like this pin. I've probably talked about these before, but friction erasable pins. I can erase them with my iron afterwards. Not that you need to on this, but I do like how they draw. The ink comes out pretty well. So I'm going to draw her neckline. See, her shoulder's about there. And there's probably going to be a shoulder seam straight across. Sometimes I'll do a shoulder seam that is slanted backwards. That's kind of an old-fashioned way of doing it, but it's really a nice thing. But on this one, I don't think that's necessary. So there's her shoulder. As you can see, there's one of her breasts right there, her bust, that we want to fit this around nice and neat. Notice how I'm folding it over. This is how we're going to draw the lines because we want to take into account this excess right here. Because the body's curved, the body's not flat. And this is how you make something fit really nice and tight. Okay, I do admit, I do a lot of test fittings, especially when I'm developing a pattern for resale or a kit or a class. I will test that pattern until it is practically perfect. So you sometimes just have to do that because even if you like, oh, this is going to be such a close fit, and then you translate it into fabric, it sometimes isn't as close as you had thought. So use scrap fabric. Don't use your nice fancy silk until you are absolutely certain it's ready. Okay, so here's the armhole. So I'm going to draw a princess line that kind of comes out, that actually comes out from the armhole. So the center panel, hope you can see this. And the seam from the center panel, this is the center panel, goes across the middle of her bust and down to her waist. Now we want it to flare out from the waist. So I'm going to draw this straight down when I do the pattern, but I'm going to flare it out here. And then the next piece I will flare out as well. So to draw the next piece, which is the side panel, we want to continue along the armhole. You're going to shore this up and straighten this out when you're, transcribing this to paper afterwards. See, I'm doing the side seam. I think that's probably what I'll do, is a side seam, because many panels, I can make a really awesome flared skirt from this. So it gives you that freedom. Now this is what we want to make sure disappears when we transcribe it. So this is difficult, but I want you to see how I do it. So sometimes I'll just mark it up and draw a line through it. Hey, this is going to disappear. This is going to disappear. Sometimes you can put what they call a dart in here, but I don't want a dart. I want to draw this in such a way that it's flat and it curves around the body. I'll show you in the next one, in the next section. So anyway, also make sure, take note of the length. This is almost floor length. So at this point, I'm not including seam allowances or hems. I am just drawing the straight design that I want. We're going to have that flare out. So I'm going to mark where I want them to flare out. And I'm going to draw the first one. This first center panel is going to be my guide. So I'm going to take it off. See that area of what we want to disappear? We're going to make that disappear in the drawing. So I don't know the technical term. Slash and spread is the term where they manipulate it so that you slash this out and then meet the cut edges so that it comes to that shape that you really want. We'll have to test it again, but for now, the center panel. Flare out. Flares don't meet exactly here because they're roughly the length from here to here as they are from here to here. So I usually measure that later. But this right here is nice and straight. So we're going to cut that out and subscribe it. What's the word? Put it on paper So it'll be a paper pattern, a flat pattern. This is the draping part. Putting it on the paper is flat pattern making. A lot of flat pattern makers just do the pattern by taking measurements. And I've done that before too. I just find that's really kind of tedious, especially for a doll. So the draping is great because I can just draw it on there instead of taking measurements and trying to figure it out from there. Though that is a very accurate way, let me tell you, almost from the get-go. All right, so let's cut this out. It's hard because it's goopy. All right, so let's just test it a little. We'll just test it. Looks like I need to draw that. Well, that's not too bad. I was gonna say it looks like I need to draw this up farther, but I think once I add in the seam allowances, it should work. So that's part of it. This is the center panel. And then this part right here, we know that this fits right here around the curve, and if we take out that little extra bit, it's going to be even more amazing. So I'm going to show you kind of, it's so sticky. Okay, maybe that's the downside of the tack it over and over. If you had an actual dummy, like that was knob porcelain or whatever, you know, like an actual stuffed dummy, you could put pins in it and hold it rather than resorting to glue. But in miniature, it's all an illusion. All right, so we know that fits around her bust, so I'm going to cut this out. I'll kind of show you what a slash and spread. This is the slashing part of it. You don't cut all the way through, just to the edge. Let me get my wonderful tweezers. They're like my third hand. This is when you put it together. Flatten that out there. So I'm going to kind of continue the side seam. This is not the full side panel because I need to match it to the length of this, and in general the length. And then of course when you put it all on paper, you got to make sure all the lengths match and the seams all match together. So that will perfectly conform around her bust right here. So that's what's fantastic about the slash and spread and the draping. So the next video, we come back, I'm going to have this drawn out, both sides fully, and I'll have this drawn out for you. And you can see that I've put this method and transferred it to paper, and then freezer paper is what I use usually. And then I can iron that freezer paper onto the fabric and cut it out from there. So that's how I make patterns. Okay, see you in the next section. Okay, so here I have transferred those, I have them over here, so those little pieces of fabric that I draped onto the doll. I transferred them to paper, freezer paper. I love freezer paper because see how it's shiny on the other side? There's a little bit of wax that they put on that side that you can then iron it down onto the fabric. So Anyway, here we go. This is the center panel. I flipped it over and made it all one piece. I added seam allowances to the sides there. And then this side panel that went over her bust, how we did that whole slash and spread, I drew it out and then I made sure that it was the same length as this. So when it sews together, it will conform to her body. At least that is my hope. I mean, that's usually what happens. But like I said, I do have to do some test fitting. So that is basically the gist of what I do when I make patterns for the dolls. And each doll has their own pattern because they each have a different outfit. And yeah, so that's what I do. And then in the next section, I will show you the books and the references that I use for the pattern making, flat pattern making draping. Okay, pardon my little ring light. It's really what lights up my space really well, but when it's something shiny, you can really see it. I hope you guys can see that. This is one of my favorite books, Designing and Pattern Making for Stretch Fabrics, because stretch fabric, or like knit fabric, has a very different fit than woven fabrics. I use mostly woven fabrics, which are non-stretchy fabrics like cottons and silks, in my doll making, but occasionally I will use stretch fabric, and this comes in very handy. All right, so my next one, this is a really good book by Connie Crawford, The Art of Fashion Draping. I know some of these books are old, and I'm sure some of you new fashion students out there are going, man, lady, get with the times. There's newer stuff. But these are tried and true ways of making patterns, and it's very helpful because they'll show you like an outline of what a piece is supposed to look like, so that gives you an idea. This is a really good book to have, and it talks about draping it on the dummy or the doll in our case. This is a really old version of this book, but they use this, I think they still use this in design schools, but it is a classic. It is fantastic, and it's really about flat pattern making. So it goes into the whole taking measurements and then how to draw from those measurements. And it's a very, very effective way of pattern making. And if you can find a way to measure your doll or miniature dummy or whatnot, then this is very useful. I use it for so many things. I love it. Here's another one. Oh, this is by Connie Crawford as well. Pattern Making Made Easy. It's got a nice kind of spiral bang to it, and then it's really easy to go through the pages. So it is, I think this is just flat pattern making. It might be both. It might be a combo of draping and flat pattern making. Anyway, these are the books that I use. I've had them for years. I know out there is software that will do all this for you. You put in the measurements and bada bing, you got a perfectly made pattern, and someday I'm going to teach myself that software. But for now, I'm old school, and that's how I make patterns for my dolls. Thanks for watching. Bye.